I live alone, but I keep waking up to someone kissing me. I woke up to the feeling of lips on mine, soft, warm, hungry. I was kissing back before I was even fully awake, lost in the hazy, dreamlike sensation of it. The way their mouth moved against mine, slow at first, then deeper, more urgent, sent a rush of heat through my body. My heart pounded. My fingers twitched against the sheets. I could feel them. The weight of someone leaning into me. The press of their chest. The faintest sigh against my skin. And then, nothing. I jerked upright, gasping, my hand flying to my lips. My bed was empty. My room was empty. The only sound was the rapid thudding of my own heartbeat in my ears. What the hell? I scanned the room, my breath coming too fast, my skin prickling. The moonlight filtering through the curtains cast long, eerie shadows across the walls, but nothing was out of place. No movement, no sign that anyone had been here. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to shake the feeling, but my lips still tingled. Like I had really been kissed. Like someone had been here, touching me, wanting me. But that was impossible. I live alone. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Maybe it was just a dream. A really, really vivid dream. That had to be it. I had been single for too long, and my brain decided to make up for it with a ridiculously realistic midnight fantasy. Still, as I lay back down, staring up at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the unease curling in my stomach. Because if it had been a dream, why did it feel like I could still taste them? About half an hour later, I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands gripping the sheets as I stared at the floor. My lips still tingled. It wasn't the first time. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe slowly, evenly. My pulse was still racing, my skin still hot, and that ghostly sensation of warmth, of someone there, hadn't completely faded. I ran a hand through my hair, fingers trembling. How many nights had it been now? 5? 6? More? I'd stopped counting after the third time, telling myself it was just dreams, just my imagination playing tricks on me. But dreams didn't leave you gasping in the dark. Dreams didn't make your body react like someone had actually been touching you. And they sure as hell didn't whisper your name in the quiet hours of the night. The first night in the house felt like the start of something good. A fresh chapter. I'd spent months searching for the right place. Something with history. Something that felt like mine. And the moment I stepped through the front door of the Victorian house, I knew. The house wasn't perfect, but it was right. I spent the day moving in, scrubbing years of dust off the fireplace mantel, arranging furniture, making the space my own. By evening, I was on the back porch, watching the sky darken over the tangled garden, a glass of wine in my hand and a rare sense of peace settling in my chest. This was home now. But then night came. The house felt different in the dark. The warmth of the day faded, leaving behind a quiet that felt expectant. The ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hall was too loud. The walls seemed taller, the rooms stretching wide and hollow. I told myself I was just tired. I collapsed onto the bed, exhaling as sleep pulled me under. Then, a kiss. Soft, gentle. The faintest pressure, warm and familiar, pressed against my lips. A slow, dreamy sigh left me as I leaned into it, my mind still drifting in the haze of sleep. But as awareness crept in, so did confusion. My eyes snapped open. The room was empty. My heart slammed against my ribs. My breath came too fast, my skin tingling like I had been touched. I ran my tongue over my lips, but the sensation lingered. Real. Impossible. I sat there staring into the darkness, waiting for something, anything to move. Nothing did. The second time, I was in the parlor, stacking books onto a shelf. I was adjusting a row of novels when something thudded against the floor. One of the books had fallen. I frowned, crouching to pick it up. Maybe I had stacked them too tight. I slid the book back into place and turned away. Another book hit the floor. I froze. A slow chill crept up my spine. I turned back slowly, my breath shallow. The book lay open, its pages fanned out like someone had dropped it. Then something cold brushed against the back of my neck. A full-body shudder ran through me. I exhaled shakily, rubbing my arms. "All right," I muttered, forcing a laugh that sounded weak even to me. "Cool trick. Real funny." Silence. I left the room. The whisper came on the third night. I had fallen asleep on the couch, the soft glow of the television flickering against the walls. Then, Charles. My name. Low, soft, right by my ear. I shot upright, my pulse hammering. My skin prickled as my eyes darted around the room. The TV cast long, shifting shadows, turning furniture into strange, warped shapes. But there was nothing. No one. But I had heard it. Someone had said my name. The fourth time, it was a touch. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, my body stiff with the weight of sleepless nights. I had started leaving lights on, locking my bedroom door, telling myself it was all in my head. Then something brushed against my arm. My breath hitched. The touch was slow, barely there, trailing up my skin with agonizing softness, up to my shoulder, down, tracing over my ribs. A shiver rippled through me. Then it was gone. I shot up, gasping, my heart hammering. My skin burned with cold, my limbs stiff with tension. The room felt thick, heavy with something unseen, something pressing against the very air around me. This wasn't my imagination. This was real. Now I sat in the dark, my hands clenched into fists in my lap. The memories buzzed through me, making my skin feel too tight, my chest too full. I wasn't alone in this house. And whoever, whatever they were, they wanted me to know it. 2 days later, I woke up shivering. The room was colder than it had any right to be. My breath puffed out in soft, misty clouds as I pulled the covers tighter around me, but it didn't help. The chill wasn't just in the air. It was sinking into my skin, curling around my bones. I groaned, reaching blindly for the extra blanket I had folded at the foot of the bed. My fingers found only empty space. Frowning, I forced myself up onto my elbows, blinking against the darkness. The blanket wasn't there, but it was draped over my shoulders. I stilled. My pulse kicked up as my fingers curled into the thick fabric, heart thudding. I knew for a fact I hadn't done that. I had gone to sleep with just my sheets. The room was silent. Nothing moved, but the weight of the blanket was real, heavy, warm, placed there. A trickle of something cold ran down my spine, but it wasn't the same bone-deep terror I had felt before. This was different, slower, more careful. Did you do this? My voice was barely above a whisper. No answer, but the air around me didn't feel empty. If anything, it felt closer, like something unseen was just there, lingering at the edges of my perception, watching, looking after me. I swallowed. My fingers curled tighter into the fabric, a quiet breath leaving my lips. "Thanks," I muttered. The cold faded, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid. 3 days later, I was at the sink, rinsing out a coffee mug, when it happened. The day had been normal, quiet, uneventful, no whispers, no strange noises, no books falling or ghostly kisses in the middle of the night. Just me, a too large house, and the distant sound of rain against the windows. So when I felt the touch, I didn't react right away. It was barely there, the lightest brush of fingers against the back of my neck, barely more than a whisper of contact, but it was enough to send a shiver rippling through me. I froze, my breath hitching. The touch lingered, a feather-light caress trailing just under my ear. Not cold, not harsh, just there. I turned slowly, expecting nothing, and I found nothing. Just my empty kitchen, the faint smell of coffee and rain, the dim afternoon light spilling in through the window. But I could still feel it. My fingers lifted, hesitantly brushing over the spot. It was warm, faintly tingling, like the memory of a touch that hadn't fully faded. I exhaled shakily, my chest too tight, my heart thudding for an entirely different reason than fear. This wasn't just haunting. This was wanting. Over a week later. It's been days, maybe weeks. I've stopped counting. The strange occurrences haven't stopped. If anything, they've become softer, more deliberate, less like a haunting, more like a presence. A lingering touch on my arm when I'm falling asleep. A book left open on the coffee table, as if someone had been reading it. A sigh in the quiet moments, one that doesn't come from me. I should be terrified. I should be packing my bags, putting this house up for sale, running far away from whatever the hell is happening here. But I'm not, because nothing has hurt me. And more than that, something inside me doesn't want to leave. It doesn't make sense. There's no logic to it, but this house, this presence, it feels like something I know. Like something I've always known. A forgotten melody that hums at the edge of my mind. A memory just out of reach. The more time I spend here, the stronger the feeling gets. I need answers, which is why I'm here now, kneeling on the floor of the master bedroom, prying up an old, warped floorboard with my fingers. It had started with a sound, a hollow thud when I stepped over this spot earlier. Too deep, too empty, like something was beneath it. My pulse hammers as the board finally gives, peeling away with a soft groan of wood. And underneath, wrapped in brittle, time-worn cloth, a book. I hesitate for only a moment before I reach for it. It's old, really old. The edges frayed, the pages yellowed with time. My stomach twists as I open it, revealing page after page of inked words in a looping, elegant handwriting. I scan the first few lines, my breath catching. To love and yet be unseen, to reach but never hold. Such is the cruel fate of longing without form. I flip forward, heart pounding. The nights grow lonelier, though I do not know why. I feel as if I am waiting, as if someone is meant to find me, as if across time and silence, a voice calls to mine. A chill snakes down my spine. This isn't just any journal. This isn't just anyone's words. This is his. I turn another page, scanning the lines, my breath coming faster. The words shift from poetic musings to something rawer, desperate. He was meant to return. I waited. I promised I would. Days passed, then weeks, then months, but I stayed. I swore I would not leave until he came back to me. But the body is weak. It betrays the heart. My fingers tighten on the fragile paper. I turned the page too fast, nearly tearing it. I fell ill. It was not sudden, but slow, a wasting, as if time itself refused to move forward without him. I dreamt of him in the fevered nights. I swore I could hear his footsteps in the hall, his voice in the doorway. But he never came. My breath hitches, and still I waited. The ink is darker here, like it was pressed harder, like the words were carved into the page with grief. I am waiting still. A shiver ripples through me. I don't realize how tight my grip is until my knuckles ache. I exhale shakily, staring down at the open book, at the words that felt like they were written just for me. This presence, this ghost, has been waiting. Not just for anyone, for someone, for him. And the worst part? The part that sends something deep and aching through my chest? I think he's still waiting. I think somehow he believes that person is me. 2 days later. It happened so fast, I almost convinced myself I imagined it. I was in the library, stretching out on the couch with the diary open in my lap, rereading the words I practically knew by heart now. The fire crackled low in the hearth, casting flickering shadows along the dark wood-paneled walls. I had started reading aloud, whispering the words, tasting them. To love and yet be unseen. A breeze stirred the room, though the windows were shut. To reach but never hold. Something touched my hand. I sucked in a sharp breath, my whole body locking up. It was faint at first, barely more than a brush of warmth against my skin. But then it grew stronger. Solid. Fingers. Light, but undeniable. Ghosting over mine. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. And then I heard him. Charles. My name. A sigh in the stillness. I gasped, turning my head, but there was nothing. Just the firelight and the stillness, and the fading warmth of where he had touched me. I pressed my fingers together, searching for any trace of him. I swore I could still feel it. 3 days later. It started as a joke. I had turned on the gramophone I found in the parlor, half expecting it not to work, but after a few hesitant crackles, the music poured out. Soft, crackling violins humming through the room. It felt right in a way I couldn't explain, like the house had been waiting for the sound. I closed my eyes, letting myself sway with it, the melody carrying me. I laughed under my breath. What do you think? I murmured to the empty space. Good taste? A whisper of movement behind me, and then hands. One settled on my waist, the other barely grazing my fingers. I froze, heart lurching into my throat. For a long moment, I didn't move. The touch was light, hesitant, as if he was afraid I'd pull away. I swallowed hard, pulse hammering. Then, slowly, carefully, I leaned into it. The grip on my waist tightened, and I felt him. His chest, the curve of his palm, the ghost of breath against my ear. We moved together, slow and measured, swaying to a song long past its time. My eyes burned. I didn't know why. You're here, I whispered. The answer came, quiet as a sigh. I always was. 2 weeks later. It started with a whisper, Not just any whisper. His voice, low and aching, curling around my name like a secret. Charles. I barely had time to react before I felt him. A breath of warmth against my skin. The softest pressure at my temple. Then my cheek, trailing lower. My lips parted before I even realized why. Before I realized I was leaning into something that wasn't supposed to be there. Then, lips. Soft. Slow. Desperate. A rush of heat bloomed in my chest, spreading through my limbs, making my fingers twitch against the sheets. I gasped against him, and he took it as permission, deepening the kiss. Really kissing me. Not just a fleeting touch, but something hungry. Needing. I didn't stop it. Didn't want to. My hands reached out instinctively, searching, grasping at nothing but air, and still I felt him. The shape of his body pressing into mine, the faintest weight on the bed, like he was almost real. He sighed into my mouth, and the sound sent a shiver down my spine. This was real as it could be. And it terrified me, because at that moment I knew I wanted this. Wanted him. A ghost. A presence in the dark. Someone I couldn't hold, couldn't keep, couldn't ever truly have. But I was already falling. And when he pulled away, when the warmth faded and the weight of him disappeared, I was left gasping in the cold, my lips tingling, my heart racing with something I didn't have a name for. A few days later, I couldn't take it anymore. Every night he came to me, whispered my name, touched me like I was something precious, kissed me like he needed me more than the air he no longer breathed. And I was losing myself in him. It didn't make sense. It shouldn't make sense. But nothing in my life had ever felt more real than this, than him. So that night, when I felt the familiar warmth pressing into my space, when his lips ghosted over mine in that hesitant, longing way, I didn't just kiss him back. I chased him. Augustus, I breathed against his lips, fingers threading through air, through nothing, through him. I love you. The world stopped. His entire form flickered, like he hadn't expected it. Like the words had reached some deep, unreachable place inside him. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I know it's insane. I know I shouldn't feel this way, but I do. I do. My voice cracked, my chest too full, too tight. I don't care what you are. I don't care how impossible this is. You are the best thing that's ever happened to me, and if I only get you in the dead of night, in fleeting moments, in whispers and kisses I can't hold on to, I'll still take it. I'll take you. His hands, real, warm, solid, framed my face. Charles, I don't care what it means, I whispered, my breath unsteady. I love you. He kissed me then. Not with the ghostly hesitation I had grown used to, but with everything. With a desperation that broke me apart and put me back together in the same breath. And for the first time, he felt whole. For the first time, we felt whole. Over a week later, something was wrong. I could feel it before I even opened my eyes. The air was heavy, thick with something that made my skin prickle. A weight pressed against my chest, not painful, but wrong. Then I heard it, his breathing. Ragged, unsteady, weak. I sat up sharply. Augustus? The fire had burned low in the hearth. casting only the faintest glow across the room. At first, I saw nothing, just the flickering light, the stillness. Then, a figure, barely there, standing at the foot of my bed. For the first time, I saw him. Not just a shadow, not just a whisper of movement in the corner of my eye. Him. Tall, lean, dressed in old Victorian layers that flickered like candlelight. His hair was black as night, his eyes even darker, and his face, I knew it. I didn't know how, but I knew it. My voice caught. Augustus? He tried to smile. It didn't quite reach his eyes. You shouldn't have done that, he whispered. His voice was different, thin, distant. I swallowed hard. Done what? He looked at me for a long moment. Then finally, you kissed me. I opened my mouth, but before I could say anything, his form flickered. For one horrible second, I felt him slipping, his presence pulling away, unraveling like thread. No, I breathed, reaching forward. No, wait! But then he was gone, and the room was colder than it had ever been. 2 days later, it happened again and again. Every time he touched me, every time his form grew stronger, he would flicker. His voice would weaken, his figure would blur at the edges, and I understood. I sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the journal in my hands, my stomach twisting. Loving me wasn't bringing him back. It was destroying him. Augustus, I whispered into the silence. Tell me it's not true. Nothing. Then, a shift in the air. A brush of warmth near my side. I wanted to pretend, he murmured. His voice was so quiet I barely heard it. I wanted to stay. I clenched my jaw. Then stay. There has to be a way. Charles. My name. A breath of sorrow. I've been waiting, he whispered. Waiting so long. And I thought maybe it was for you. I turned to him, throat tight. Augustus. But he was already fading again. His hands were the last thing to disappear. And when they did, I felt the loss like a wound. 3 days later, Augustus was fading. It wasn't slow anymore. It wasn't subtle. One moment he'd be there, his dark eyes locked onto mine, his hands almost solid in my grasp. The next, he'd flicker like a dying candle, his form unraveling, slipping between the cracks of reality, like he had never existed at all. Tonight was the worst yet. I had barely touched him, just the briefest brush of my fingers along his jaw. And then he shattered. I watched, horror twisting in my gut, as his body flickered, his lips parting, his expression crumbling into something like pain. His grip on my arm weakened, and his voice, usually smooth, usually rich with something teasing, something loving, was nothing but a whisper. Charles, it's taking me. No. I yanked at him, trying to anchor him here, trying to keep him here. No, you're not going anywhere. Do you hear me? His eyes softened. He tried to smile, but it barely held. You can't stop it. But I could. I would. I didn't care what it took. I didn't care what it cost. If there was any way to bring him back, to pull him from whatever void was clawing at him, I would find it. So I searched. For nights, I barely slept. I scoured old books, dug through archives, searched the darkest corners of the house for something. The diary had given me pieces of his past, but I needed more. a way to undo this. And then I found it. Buried in the back of the old study, hidden behind a loose panel in the wall, was a book. Its pages were stiff with age. The ink faded, but I could read it. A ritual. A way to bring back what was lost. But the price. I swallowed hard, gripping the book so tightly my hands ached. Half of my life. Half of me. For him. The next day, the attic was freezing. The kind of cold that sunk into my bones, that made my breath come out in shaky white puffs. The book lay open before me, the candles flickering in a perfect circle around the space. Shadows stretched long across the walls, warping the room into something unreal. Augustus stood at the edge of the light, watching me. He looked afraid. "Charles," his voice was hoarse. "This is wrong." I ignored him. "You're dying." My hands shook as I traced the symbols on the floor, my blood staining the wood. "Every time I touch you, you disappear a little more. I won't let you go." He stepped forward. The candlelight caught on the sharp planes of his face, on the darkness in his eyes. "And what about you?" His voice was quiet now. Too quiet. I swallowed. "I'll live." He knelt in front of me, his hand lifting like he wanted to cup my face. But he hesitated, his fingers hovering inches from my skin. I could see the way he flickered, how the edges of him blurred and wavered, like smoke in the wind. "Half your life," his voice cracked. "Do you understand what that means?" Yes, I did. I would lose years, decades maybe. My life would be cut short. But what was a half-life without him in it? I met his gaze, steady. "I don't care." His breath hitched. A few hours later, pain. It wasn't instant. It wasn't a clean cut. It was ripping. Like something deep inside me was being torn away, dragged from my body in jagged, searing pieces. I choked on a scream. My vision went white, and my fingers clawed at the floorboards as the ritual took. It took. Augustus was beside me, his voice frantic, his hands gripping my shoulders. Solid hands. Real hands. But I could barely hear him over the pounding in my head. My body burned. My veins burned. Something snapped. A rush of air, like the whole house was inhaling at once. The candles blew out. Darkness swallowed the attic, thick and absolute. My breath came in sharp, ragged gasps as my body collapsed forward, drained, shaking, empty. The world felt tilted, like something fundamental had shifted in the space around me. I blinked against the dark, my limbs trembling. Augustus?" My voice was barely above a whisper. "Nothing." I swallowed hard, forcing my shaking hands to press against the cold wooden floor as I pushed myself upright. The air was still. Dead. The warmth of him, the faint, flickering presence I had clung to for weeks, gone. I turned wildly, my breath hitching. "Augustus!" Silence. The room was empty. The ritual was over, and I had no idea if it had worked. I pressed a hand to my chest, to the hollow ache where something irreplaceable had been torn away. My vision swam, my pulse weak, my body heavy. Had I done it? Had I saved him? Or had I just erased him forever? The next day, the house was too quiet. I stood in the attic, surrounded by the remnants of the ritual, the burnt-out candles, the symbol smeared in my own blood, the heavy scent of smoke still clinging to the air. My body ached like something inside me had been ripped out, a deep, hollow emptiness settling in my chest. And Augustus? He was gone. I had woken up alone, sprawled on the attic floor, my head pounding, my limbs shaking. The air had been still, thick with something final. No flickering shadows, no whisper of my name, no cool touch against my skin. Nothing. I searched the entire house, tearing through every room, calling his name until my voice cracked. But he wasn't here. Not anymore. I pressed a hand to my chest, where my heart pounded, too fast, too loud, like it was trying to remind me I was still alive, that I was still here. But it didn't feel like it. I had given up half my life for him, and now I didn't even know if it had worked. Had I saved him? Or had I just erased him completely? I slumped against the cold wall, my breath coming in shaky gasps. My fingers curled into my shirt, gripping the fabric like I could somehow hold myself together. He was supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to be alone. I squeezed my eyes shut, biting down on the sob clawing up my throat. But it didn't matter. The house didn't care. The walls didn't care. Augustus was gone, and I had no way of knowing if I would ever see him again. 3 months later, the world had kept moving. Days had turned into weeks. The house remained empty. The whispers, the touches, the flickering presence in the dark, gone. And I, somehow, was still here. I had forced myself to go outside more, to be around people, to exist. It felt strange, like I was walking through a life that wasn't mine anymore. But I tried. And that's how I ended up here, sitting in a crowded cafe, staring blankly at a cup of coffee I hadn't even touched. The bell above the door chimed. I barely glanced up. And then, my body went still. A man stepped inside, shaking off the cold. He had dark hair, slightly messy like he'd been running his fingers through it. His long coat was buttoned up to his throat, but underneath I could see a vest. Formal, a little old-fashioned. And his eyes, black, deep, familiar. My breath caught. It wasn't possible. It wasn't possible. He turned towards the counter, scanning the menu, completely unaware that my entire world had just tipped sideways. He wasn't a ghost. He wasn't flickering. He was just a man. Real. Alive. And yet everything in me screamed him. Augustus. I didn't realize I was moving until I was standing beside him. "Tea," he murmured to the barista. His voice was lower than I remembered, but the cadence, the softness of it, was the same. Not coffee. Too bitter. He still didn't drink coffee. I opened my mouth, not even sure what I was going to say, but then he turned, and our eyes met. It was just a second, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze, but I felt it. A pull, a spark. Recognition, except not really. Like his soul knew me, even if his mind didn't. A few minutes later, I wasn't the kind of guy who believed in fate, but standing there, watching him, Augustus, but not Augustus, order his tea like he had done 100 times in his past life, I felt like the universe was laughing at me. He was alive. Alive. Flesh and blood and breathing, standing right there in front of me. And he had no idea who I was. No memory of the nights we spent together. The stolen kisses. The whispered promises. The way I had bled to bring him back. And yet, the way he stood. The way his fingers tapped against the counter. The way his nose scrunched slightly as he read the menu. It was him. Different body, different life, but him. I could feel it. So obviously, I did what any normal, totally well-adjusted person would do when faced with the reincarnation of their lost love. I walked up beside him, leaned in slightly, and said, "You look like a man who enjoys a good, dramatic love story." He blinked, turning toward me. Dark eyes, sharp but warm. The corner of his mouth quirked up in amusement. "Do I?" His voice was deeper now, smoother, but something in the way he spoke, like he was savoring the words, made my chest ache. "Yeah," I said, crossing my arms and tilting my head, playing it casual. "And lucky for you, I happen to be an expert in sweeping, heart-wrenching romances. Very tragic. Lots of longing looks and dramatic confessions." I tapped my chin. "Though I do offer happier endings, if that's more your thing." He chuckled, low and rich, and God, he still laughed the same way. That's so. He turned to face me fully now, studying me like he was trying to place where he'd seen me before. Except he hadn't. Not in this life. But his soul knew me. I could see it in the way his amusement softened just a little. The way his gaze lingered, like he was drawn to me and didn't understand why. I shrugged. "I'm just saying, if you're in the market for a meet-cute, you're nailing it right now." His lips parted, and then to my absolute delight, he laughed again. "All right, I'll bite," he said, eyes glinting. "What's the next part of this tragic love story of ours?" I grinned. "You let me buy you a cup of tea, obviously." He raised an eyebrow. "And if I say no?" I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice just enough to make his breath hitch. "Then I'll have to spend the rest of my life dramatically pining after you from across the cafe, whispering your name into my coffee, and staring longingly out the windows while it rains." He bit his lip, amusement dancing in his expression. Then, "Well," he said, tilting his head, "I wouldn't want to be responsible for that level of heartbreak." He extended a hand, palm up, an invitation. "All right, tragic romance expert," he said, his voice teasing, but there was something else there too. Something warm. "Let's start with tea." And just like that, the universe gave me a second chance. 2 years later. The morning sun poured through the windows, casting golden light across the living room floor. Laughter echoed through the house, high-pitched, full of pure, unfiltered joy. "Papa! Daddy! Look!" I barely had time to react before a tiny body barreled into my legs, nearly knocking me over. I laughed, catching our daughter before she could tumble to the floor. "Whoa there, kiddo," I said, lifting her into my arms. "What's got you all excited this early?" She wiggled happily, holding up a crayon drawing in both hands. "I drew us. Look!" I peered at the paper. 3 little stick figures, all holding hands. Me, Augustus, and her, right between us, her curly hair scribbled in wild loops. A big yellow sun beamed down over our heads. It was messy, colorful, perfect. Augustus appeared beside me, leaning over my shoulder to look. "Wow," he murmured, his hand resting against the small of my back. "That's incredible. You're a real artist, darling." Our daughter beamed. "I know." Then she wiggled out of my arms, already off on her next adventure. I turned to Augustus, my chest aching in the best way possible. His wedding band caught the sunlight as he reached up to brush a strand of hair from my face. "You're staring," he teased, but his voice was soft. "Can you blame me?" I murmured, leaning in. "I married a ridiculously handsome man." He huffed a laugh. "You think you did. I know I did," I said, pressing a quick kiss to his lips before pulling back to look at him fully. "And I think it's about time I told him a story." Augustus arched a brow. "Oh? What kind of story?" I took his hand, running my thumb over his ring, over the solid proof of everything we had built together. "A ghost story." His lips quirked. "I thought you hated those." I smirked. "Not this one." I took a deep breath, my heart pounding, not with fear, but with something lighter, something hopeful. "Do you want to hear about the time I lived in a haunted house?" I asked, watching his expression carefully. "And fell in love with a ghost?" His smile faltered just slightly, his brow creasing in thought, like something deep inside him stirred at the words, like a whisper of something almost remembered. Then his fingers curled around mine, holding tight. "Tell me everything," he said. Conclusion. Telling Augustus everything felt like lifting a weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying. He listened, quiet and intent, his fingers laced with mine. At first, he didn't remember, but something in him felt it. The echoes of another life, of love lost and found again. The ritual had worked. We lived a half-life, years stolen from me, but in return, we got this. A love worth 1,000 full lives. A family. A home filled with laughter and warmth. Augustus kissed me when I finished the story, his forehead resting against mine. "However we got here," he murmured, "I choose you in every lifetime." And I knew, without a doubt, I'd do it all over again. The end. Do you think you can give up half your life for love? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force, and stay wholesome.